Da da da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, welcome, everybody. I don't have a camera tonight. I don't know what's going on, but this has happened before, so I know that I am live. So I am going to carry on because we got an amazing word this week. I'm just going to go into my channel here and I'm just going to turn my volume down, and I'm just going to just double check that I am there going live. I am in that. Amazing, you guys. This is the end of my few days off, and in that time I have had a great deal of rest, which I didn't realize that I needed truly until I actually got into it. And, realizing that, you know, life is okay. We sometimes put our effort and our energy into things that don't matter in all truth. My house is clean. Is it tidy? Well, it could be tidier. But should I waste my days off pounding that pavement? Or should I, do a little bit for myself? Should I give myself that little bit of rest that I didn't realize that I needed, but once I was in it, right? It felt great, right? So I enjoyed my days off. But in saying that, I have to say I'm very grateful to have the job that puts the roof over my head, that I have an opportunity for a few days to go to work and ground in my job and take my direct focus, that highly sensitive, right? I got that, right? And I'm staring at that. But sometimes when you're staring at that, your eyes get blurry. Sometimes you get bored. Sometimes, there are interferences in that, which is just life, and we get totally agitated by it. And, it's nice to have those other parts of us served. And for me, there's lots of things, I have the job that puts the roof over my head, that allows me to practice my craft and practice just being human, right? It's one thing in having the lessons, but practicing them. It was something kind of, as a child, the way that my family brought us up, it was not like any of us girls to step out of line that way. But it has offered up some resilience, has offered us up an opportunity to be able to, right, connect with other people that we might not otherwise connect with, to be able to have confidence in ourselves, so that, you know for me it was wanting to be part of that it crowd, those beautiful people. And even when I got into those crowds, right, like, I could recognize that they were just as handicapped as I was, and I didn't hang out with those people because it made me feel better about myself, knowing that these beautiful people were just as kinked, and I'm saying kink like crooked or a little bit broken, whether it was physical, mental, or emotional. It was in that company, knowing, right, that everybody is imperfect. And I got to meet a lot of people who ended up being just as beautiful on the inside as they were on the outside. And that was through my eyes and through my experience, where the person standing next to me would have had a different, totally 100% idea on that. And that is the truth. This week, you guys, we got this word grace. And I thought, if I'm going to tell this word that I just accidentally stumbled on to the meaning, which is, and it's just one suggestion for meaning, right? For me, even the way I looked at it, right? The terminology in Wikipedia was an undeserving miracle. When I looked at grace, I looked at it as a miracle, right? But as something that is offered up when there is no other possibility of resurrection or succeeding or resolving itself, that when we give that, right, that letting go, giving it up to whoever or whatever to resolve that problem, whatever it might be, big or small, right? And miracles do come in big forms and small forms, but not necessarily is it undeserving. Each one of us is deserving just in the struggles of being a human, right? Like I said, we all have handicaps. We all have kinks. We all have issues, and some of us have those issues and they're emotional, and you don't see those, right? Because of that control we have in our systems. Sometimes they are physical, and when others see that, right, and if they uh, recognize and understand if it's emotional or mental, that we can tend to use those as tools against those parties just to make ourselves feel better, right? Okay, I'm crawling down side trees. I think I'm still on the main trunk, but I may be crawling down a side tree. I wanted to tell a story of grace in myself. I thought it would be a good one, you know, and I'm gonna start it off. This story is called "How COVID Saved My Life." That's a good. I won't write it in the thumbnail, right? Just because I'll have even less people watching this one. But it is true. It was my piece of grace. You know, and I don't believe that I was deserving in my struggles. Yes, in that humanness and in falling into that trap of coping mechanisms. I was a video lottery terminal addict. I had been that since, I would have to say, 1990, around then, when they first were allowed to come out into the nightclubs and bars. And at that time I was working in a nightclub, and I had just gotten engaged, and we took a ferry, my fiance at the time, and we went to the Maritimes to go visit his family, just so that they could meet me and stuff before we got married. My husband was in the military. He came home for a tour, and we took off on this amazing trip to the East Coast, and we rented a car, and we just traveled up and down the coast, and we stayed with his family, and it was amazing. But we quickly ran out of money. Remember, I was working in a bar, and I didn't have a lot of knowledge or inclination of even learning about money and budgeting. It was just not, you know, what I was taught in any aspects, except maybe, family studies in high school for a couple of years. And for the most part, I skipped my classes in my seniors years. Wasn't concerned with schools, and my parents didn't seem so concerned that I wasn't going to school. I'm not using that as an excuse. I'm just as honestly letting people know that I just didn't have an inclination in school. It didn't interest me in any well, and I didn't excel in it in any way. So we quickly ran out of money on this trip, and remember, my husband had just gotten back for a tour. We were supposed to be saving money, piling money up, right? For us to have uh, a little stockpile to do something for ourselves, do something for our future. And again, I was not frivolous. I was very frivolous with money. My husband was just as frivolous in the things that he enjoyed, the things that he liked, and we quickly ran out of money on this trip. We had to take a ferry over to Prince Edward Island. It was disconnected from the coast, so we wanted to travel PEI, and we got on the ferry, and they had these video lottery terminals in the bar area. Hardly had any money left. Like we were on our seriously our last $100 or something. We still had a few more days before we were supposed to catch our flight and go home. And I just for fun, I'd never played, so at that time I wasn't an addict, right? So I'd never played these things before. Mind you, I had that connection in my childhood of my dad being a compulsive gambler and us going to Reno and Vegas all the time, and those fond memories of the casinos in the city, because yes, the casinos were in the city, but they weren't in the bars at the time. And my dad being compulsive gambler, lots of times if I wanted to spend time with my dad, I'd have to go find him at the casino, right? So I was familiar with gambling. And so I decided to put some money into these gambling machines, and I hit a big one. I hit a big one, so big that we could um, end that vacation on a high. And it was that high that when the slot machines, which very shortly, I think within months, turned up in our bar here in Winnipeg when we got home, that I instantly was hooked. I was hooked so bad on those things. And I was hooked for decades. I would go home and I would cry. I would lie to my husband about how I spent the bill money, and right, I was making so much money. Some nights I would make $1,000 in tips, and that's not a lie. I would do so well in this job and never take anything home, like never, except on those odd times when I hit a big one, and then I could feel like a beat shot for a few hours until, right, I was back on the machines and I was losing that. My marriage fell apart. My marriage didn't even have a chance. We loved each other so much. And even in breaking up, it took us a decade to truly pull apart from each other. And in the end, I just had to say, don't ever call me again. It was just too painful, right? It was more painful being apart than it was being together. And it wasn't even painful to be together in all actual truth. The whole breakup of our marriage took me by surprise. Yes, right? I had a gambling problem, but it wasn't the gambling that was the problem. It was the symptoms of the gambling, right? Not spending time with my husband, but spending time with the machines. It was the lying about where the money was and where I was spending the money. It was that depressed state I was in because I was coming home and having to lie to my husband. And I wasn't a liar. I was a very terrible liar, in fact, and he knew I was lying, right? But the worst part of it is that beautiful, positive state that I had spent so much time working myself up into, that made it possible that I even caught such a beautiful man to start with, who wanted to spend his life with me. That was diminished by the gambling. It was totally diminished, and it was replaced with guilt and shame and delving right back into those coping mechanisms of mine of gluttony. And right, didn't take me long to put on 50 pounds, right? My husband came home one day and said, Cindy, I don't think I want to be married anymore. And I just said, okay, right? I've never been one to cry over spilt milk. I did cry over that one for a very, very, very long time. And it destroyed me. But as it was destroying me, I was destroying myself still with those VLT machines, those video lottery terminals, gambling. And it doesn't matter, you can replace it with any addiction that you could possibly think of. But that was my addiction. That was the emotional attachments that I had, right? Was when I was stressed out, well, if I had money problems, I was going to hit a big one and all my problems are going to resolve, right? I was going to pay off the bills and I was just so far behind. Marriage had fallen apart, right? And I got trapped in more addictions. I got addicted to payday loans, and those are the ones where you take loans against your paychecks. And I had three or four of those things going on at the same time. Thousands of dollars every 2 weeks in rotation, and I would pay one off, take one immediately, go to the next one, pay that one off, take another one immediately. I was always at zero. So you can imagine my state of mind, the state of being in so positive, right? Losing all that weight, finding my amazing husband, having the wedding of my dreams, right? Living the life of my dreams and have it snatched away from me. And I could have blamed anybody for that. Could have been the circumstances of the VLTs coming in. It could have been me having that weakness and that attachment and those fond memories of those times with my father, how much I loved him. And my father, who I loved more than anything, could be a gambling addict. So could I. Maybe it would bring me closer to my father, right? I have no idea. Daddy issues, 100%, right? In that codependency, I'm sure there are ties into those addictions that I had, right? I called this podcast tonight, COVID Saved My Life, because I started waking up to some ideas, right? After taking a good look at my life, right? Being a gambling addict, being, I didn't know it at the time, but I was scapegoat in a dynamic family full of narcissists, right? I didn't even understand any of this. I was totally blind and naive to any of these, right? These were questions and answers that had never come across my path, conversations and experiences that had never come across my path before. But because I was trying so hard with my YouTube channel, right? PrairieDodgers, that I was building my brand, right? I put myself in a prime state to be woken up totally. Totally. I don't know, right? It is a process 100%. And I'm a process. But it started then. And right, you gotta make a mess to clean a mess. And my life crashed. My life crashed so hard that I came within 24 hours of becoming homeless. And that's the truth. And right, I was given the grace. It was 24 hours. There was no hope for me. I had no money. I had no place to go. I had no, my furniture, all my belongings, everything were about to be taken away from me. I didn't know what to do. I had just started a new job. I was in mentorship. Like it was an experience and a half, 100%. And then COVID started and it just made it worse, right? Because now everything's locked down. How do I find a place to live? Even if I did have money, how would I find a place to live, right? We couldn't even go outside. We couldn't even go to the grocery store, right? It was pretty bad and we all had our own experiences with that. But in locking me down like that, it locked the bars down also, right? The casinos were shut down, right? I couldn't go and play VLTs. And, you know, I did try a few times to quit, but when I didn't have access to those video lottery terminals, it gave me some time, right? It gave us a few months. Each one of us had a few months to take a good look at our lives and to make some movements for ourselves. And that was the movement I made, right? I was still able to get out on the road with Prairie Dodgers and my outdoor explorations, right? I found mindset and right shared a little bit of the journey. Kind of embarrassing looking back on some of those videos and some of that content that I put out to the world. But I believe 100% that that was all part of the grace. That was to save me, right? I quit playing video lottery terminals uh, almost 5 years ago now. And, I have been enticed to go back to them. Hello, Nancy, a few times, but never, not 5 cents, not 5 cents, not so much as a lottery ticket, right? Gambling is no longer a part of my life. And I attribute that to that little bit of grace that somehow came across my path, right? The whole world had to be locked down to get me off of those things, but that's exactly what happened. And no matter what, I will not look at that time, right? That was a scary time for everybody. We know lots of people who were affected by that, right? I am grateful that I never got COVID, that, right? I listened to the experts in their fields. I listened to the majority. I listened to my heart to decide for myself, right? What was true and what wasn't true. And I made those choices and I made those decisions just like I made those decisions that, right, I'm not going to play realities. I've been given this little bit of grace by circumstance because that's what it was. The world had to crash in order for me to be lifted, right? Just like, right, that mess that had to be created in order for me to be able to clean it up. Because in cleaning it up, you get to see the mess that it truly was, right? Okay, COVID was hard for everyone. I went nuts being cooped up. I was going mad. I remember that, Nancy. I remember what a hard time you had. I remember how scared you were too because of your health issues that you had to go into the hospital, right, to get your shots. And remember, right, the all those other issues that you had. I mean, it's not my place to say, right, your story, but oh my goodness, I remember how hard it was for you, right? We supported each other because I was going through mine the same time as when you were going through yours. And look at, right, we're still kicking, Nancy, right? We have everything that we need in this moment. And lots of times we don't appreciate, right? We think sometimes that right, nobody's watching out for us, that we're all here alone. I think each one of us is meant to be each other's angels. I really do. I do believe, Nancy, that you came across my path for a reason and touched my life, and I hope, right, that I touched your life a little bit too in that relationship that took us some time, right, for us to get to know each other and stuff. But what is the rush? Too many of us rush into those relationships and get ourselves stuck, right? And we stay in them knowing that they're not good for us, but we stay in them because, right? They offer the roof over our heads, or, right, there's a paycheck coming into the house, or somebody's got a cottage at the lake, or they're your only friend. And right, if they're not in your life, who's going to be in your life? And then we end up, right, just settling. And not only just settling, we start living for other people. We live vicariously through other people. And you know in part of that grace was that separation from my family too. I'm going to have to say it's all in, right? It all just kind of fell apart and got put back together at the same time, because I needed to be pulled away from my family, because right, my me and my sisters were so tight. We've been in each other's lives all our lives, right? We've stayed in the same city together, and we're all, in the very least, in our 50s, right? And we have always been together, except in those small spurts, right? And it is in that codependence, right? We're all very independent, but we're very independent because of that codependence. You know what I mean? Because of that backup, right? If I had a problem, or if I needed anything, or if I needed to cover a bill, or if I needed groceries in the cupboard, I'd phone my sister, right, Tracy, and she would swoop in happily to the rescue, right? Because that's what brought her joy, was my joy, right? Was my my consideration to her, my love for her, because she made it so that, life wasn't all catastrophes. It wasn't all a mess. That I could, right, whistle while I put things back together, whistled while I worked, right? That I wasn't crying through my miseries. I was having adventures. I was still working my YouTube channel. I was still hitting the back roads until I wasn't hitting the back roads. And there's a story of grace in that too, 100%. We don't appreciate the moments of grace that are always happening for us. They're always happening for us. Tonight I had no idea that I was going to offer that experience. It never even crossed my mind, even in remembrance, right? That had happened. And that was the biggest piece of grace that could have happened for me, right? I cried. I cried. My marriage was dissolved because of my addiction. I had so many money issues. It had turned me into a liar, right? And I was a terrible liar, right? There was no need for me to lie up until that point because, right? Not like I was a goody two shoes, but that guilt and shame, right, was not a good feeling. And being highly sensitive and being empathic, we move with our feelings, and it's very easy to have those feelings surface. We don't need people, right, to give us a little jab or a little pinch or a little say so, right? We do that for ourselves. And so, you know I'm grateful because I'm not lying. I'm not covering my tracks. And not only am I not covering my tracks, right, I'm using this platform, which I've been able, all through that breakdown in my life, all through that mess. And like it was like tornado mess. Like I said, I came within 24 hours of being homeless. I can't even imagine how close I came. Very, very, very scary. And there was grace in that too, that I had that experience, right? That fear of the possibility of becoming homeless. but I was grateful that it didn't happen, right? I was so grateful that it didn't happen. I thought for sure there was nothing I could do, right? I was just waiting for it, right? I was just waiting for it and just kind of worked out for itself. Maybe I could have just let it go and let it be on its own, but I like to steer the steering wheel, don't I? Right? And we all do, and that's part of it is letting go of that control so that more of these miracles and more grace can come into our lives, right? That grace of understanding, right, is the miraculous gift in my life, right? And it's not something that would have come to me. I do believe if I couldn't have overcome some of those greatest addictions, which were my coping mechanisms, right? And, you know, so I'm grateful for those because that's how I survived to be able to, right, get to this point. So I'm grateful for them. But, right, it is in my optimistic idea that as I better understand them, as I step more into the control of my own life and my own coping mechanisms, right, they won't be so much of a coping mechanism. Wouldn't that be a miracle, right? And it's possible, right? And why am I saying it's possible? Because I've seen the evidence of that in my own life. It was so easy to quit, which had wanted to take me down, which wanted to totally destroy me. Not only did it want to destroy me, I was 99.9% sure that it was going to. And in that last second, Grace stepped in, right? And showed me that evidence. And it gave me the courage, the stamina, and that belief that possibly, right, somebody else in that evidence that I'm experiencing in my experience might hit home for somebody else and they might have their own experience. Couldn't ask for anything more than that. Nancy, thank you. Aw, you never let me quit. I believe that to be 100% true. I wouldn't even want to try to miss one day. You'd be on me so fast. Those emails would be flying in a minute, wouldn't they? She would. She would. Okay, you guys. That's my good cheer. That's the end of my days off. The end of the heavy lessons. We'll do the light ones all week long, right? It's my thing. I love doing it. And there is that right inside of me saying, right? Just a little bit more, Cindy. You got this, right? You don't win the gold medal without putting in the work. Not like I'm going for a gold medal. Not in any sport, anyway. Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer. We'll see each other tomorrow. It'll definitely be in the afternoon because early, very early afternoon because I am working tomorrow. So I want to make sure that when I got off work tonight, if I feel like walking home, if my feet aren't sore, then that's what I can do without worrying about rushing home to do the live. Everybody, have a great night. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you so much for popping in. Have a great night.